Happy New Year. Hi everyone, how are you today? Good to see you. I missed your faces that I don't actually see, but potentially you're there. Welcome back if you've been here before. If not, welcome to Faux Pods with Lola, the formats where it's like a podcast where I talk and I pretend people are listening and I talk about interesting things and hopefully we all have fun. I have been gone for 3 weeks. I took a long holiday break, I guess you could say. My dad came to visit from Colorado. That was really fun. Usually his visits consist of us just eating tons of good food, visiting local hotspot favorites, not really like we're not out clubbing together or anything, but local landmarks, and we got to golf a whole bunch. That sport is kind of growing on me, which is, I know, it's really weird. Don't really seem like a golfing type of person, but I can see why so many people are. This is really fun. Around the same time that my dad came to visit, I started watching Alan Carr Chatty Man clips and episodes. Okay, so if you are not an Anglophile like myself, the references that English people make are different, obviously, than references that they make here sometimes. The accents can sometimes be hard to get around, but if you can find a way around all that and you don't normally watch British television, I highly recommend Alan Carr Chatty Man. It's no longer running. The series is, it was, I believe, early 2000s to mid 2000s, so it's not hot off the presses, but it's like a little time capsule. So I've been definitely like, oh yeah, I remember that, or oh wow, that's when that came out. And then I'll see synchronicities in my daily life. Like I saw the super nanny, Jo, her name is Jo something, super nanny, and she was plugging her book. And I was at the thrift store yesterday and I saw that book. It's been really cool and really fun. On a personal note of someone who watches and consumes a lot of media stuff, I've never seen a chat show host get someone to open up and relax and be themselves and have fun. And if they come back, they're like, oh, I missed you. Like, oh, yay. It's like a homecoming, and that is so rare. Talk shows are not designed to be like everyone, it's just like a slumber party. Everybody's just hanging out, having a good time. He's my pretend best friend now. I have a lot of them, but I love all of them. And in a way, it's better than having an actual best friend because you can just, you only have, you know what I mean? Check him out if you don't. And Alan Carr, if you're watching this by some crazy glitch in the matrix, I absolutely love you. Thank you for that show. And I will keep watching and rewatching them. They are amazing. And then also, this kind of segues into my video for today. My dad wanted to watch, last year we watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, introduced my daughters to it, absolutely loved it, gripped and riveted. And then this year he wanted to watch the Fast and the Furious franchise, the whole thing from 1 to 9, which is a lot of movies. But we did it. We had a lot of fun doing it. So it kind of got me thinking about prequels and sequels. There's a formula that works, certainly for action movies or for, big budget kind of blockbustery movies. There's a formula that works, but also should we be following a formula to make art? So as I've mentioned before, I'm not a fan of contrived money grab prequels, sequels, installments to the Marvel franchise. Got so convoluted that I stopped caring. I would watch them and be like, I don't know what just happened. It was fun to watch, but I don't know what just happened. Those stand out the most to me. Do we need that many? At the heart of it, I feel like if you tell the story sufficiently the first time around, do we need another 2 to 12 telling a similar story or the exact same story kind of on a loop? It's fun to watch, and it's usually down to the chemistry of the characters, right? The cast chemistry. As a, a director or a producer or someone that's at the helm of greenlighting those types of movies, I feel like where do we draw the line? Because a lot of times I feel like it should have been drawn 5 movies ago and no one drew the line. In the Fast and Furious franchise, that's a good example. All of the movies have a core of family comes first and just have integrity in what you do. Vin Diesel's character, Dom, they refer to him as the alpha, so that is always a kind of a string through all of the movies. They have a core heartbeat of that and some high octane fun. Like, yeah, they are. They're fun. Do I think that they should have continued after Paul Walker, who played Brian in the franchise, had a real life tragic fatal car accident that he didn't survive? No, not necessarily. Do the back end installments without his character, do they offer a similar vibe? Yeah, they do. An instance of the trilogy that works, which I mentioned slightly before that we watched last year, is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Peter Jackson was able to film all of those movies back to back. So I believe it was 4 years in New Zealand, same cast, same crew, same director, same vibe, the same characters and the same story arc. He was able to keep that vibe and like flesh it out completely. That's why those movies are so iconic, and you can watch them over and over and over again, and it's like a new adventure every time. If you don't have that continuity in the vibe, and you don't have someone paying attention to details and making creative decisions that keep the original integrity of whatever story that you're telling, I feel like that's when things get kind of loosey-goosey and we stop caring about the characters because it gets redundant, it gets out of character. Things start happening that you're like, wait a minute, that kind of negates their whole story arc last installment, you know, things like that. And when that happens, you just stop caring about the movie and you stop caring about what really was happening. You probably will still watch because of the first original, you know, impact that story, those characters had on you. But it's like the luster is gone and it almost works against you. And it's almost like a painful reminder of all the things as you get older that just stop being magical. Maybe that's just me, but that's always where I end up. Several sequels that make this faux pas, and it's one of my absolute it's just very chagrining to me. I'm chagrined when this happens. In the first movie, character A and character B really can't stand each other, and there's tit and tat and blah, blah, blah. And then through the course of the movie, they learn to love or respect or at least just tolerate each other, or they become really, you know, close, bonded souls. And then that movie does really well because, you know, they execute it well or whatever. So they decide to make a second one, which they didn't plan on with the first one. So they tack on a second one and they try to stick to the same formula that the first movie had. They go back to square one where we were at the beginning of the first movie instead of all of the change that happened. You ended here. We were here, we ended here. And then sometimes they'll make a sequel where that journey just didn't even happen, it seems. One that stands out to me, just always sticks in my mind when I think about this stuff, is Meet the Fockers. I really appreciate Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro's chemistry of being modern, soft-spoken, kind of forward-thinking man and an old school, more macho man. They learn to tolerate each other because Ben Stiller's character is marrying his daughter and like all this stuff. Then the second movie, Robert De Niro's character went right back to the beginning. He was treating Greg, Ben Stiller's character, he was treating him exactly like he did at the beginning of the first movie. And I was bummed. I really enjoyed, for some reason, that chemistry really, really was fun to watch. It's disheartening because you're like, oh, well, like, why'd you even make one or the other? Because it's the same movie. And it just feels like a cash grab. It just makes me wonder why art has to be contrived like that, when if it's inspired, you don't have to contrive it. Prequel, sequel, reboot that's like 20 years later, 15 years later, 10 years later after a successful series had a run or a successful movie. Not a fan of those either. There's usually a formula that they think that they have to follow in order to make money on an idea that doesn't need to be. Dumb and Dumber was one of the funniest, most interesting, weirdest, quirkiest indie comedies to ever come out of the 90s. 20 years later, they wanted to revisit those characters and make them somehow raunchier, not as smarter. It hurt because Dumb and Dumber is such a funny movie. It was such an inspired, funny movie. I had the soundtrack. You know that's my seal of like deep in my heartness. Flying in the face of all the reasons and all of the cherished experiences you have in a movie. If someone just goes back and is like, oh, just kidding, look, we're going to do it again. But this time everyone's older and it's kind of confused why they're still doing the same shit 20 years later. You know, like it hurts for someone that cares about movies, that loves the execution of movies, that just cherishes the journey. I can't exactly criticize without having a solution. It doesn't help. There are some filmmakers that have nailed the art of having their own style, having their own signature humor, having a similar cast of characters, if not the exact same actors, over and over again, but with a different journey each time. Edgar Wright, who's one of my all-time favorite directors, Christopher Nolan, Wes Anderson, they'll take the same essence. That's the formula. It's the essence of what people watch their movies for. They will make a whole new, different story. So if you like their style, if you like the chemistry of the characters, if you like all that stuff, then you're probably going to like each installment of a movie that they do. But it doesn't have to be a prequel, sequel. It doesn't have to be an offshoot of the same story and the same characters. You can still recreate the same magic, but you don't have to just use one story to do that. Beat the same story into the ground just to make money. That money will follow. If you make something decent, it will follow, whether it's a cult classic and it gains you like street cred. If you write something good and you know it's good, then money will follow. Gearing and tooling and tinkering, all of the wonderful resources you have as a filmmaker just to make money, like, they're utterly forgettable, guys. They're utterly forgettable, and you deserve better as an audience member. And that's my second point. If we are to make it past all of these subpar installments, editions, versions of movies that we actually love in the first place, the first one, we got to quit going and seeing these movies. Now, I know that's really hard to do. It seems like, well, why? I'm curious. I owe it to these characters. You don't, though. What you owe to yourself is to make sure that this doesn't keep happening. If we can somehow stop ourselves from entering the theater and making the, it's like a vicious cycle, maybe they'll start changing that horrible, horrible contrived formula bullshit. So the power is with us. We just don't think it is. Fried Green Tomatoes is one of my all-time favorite dramas. It makes me cry buckets of tears every time I see it. It's heart-wrenching. It's so well done. I don't need or want to see them 20 years later after all of that beautiful story arc happened. They already changed my life. They already altered my way of thinking. They already shook me up and made me feel emotions. It's okay if that's just a one-off. We all have preferences. Some people prefer bangs and whistles and explosions to challenging writing, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I will always enjoy the cotton candy action movie. Like, I am a fan of action movies, actually. I just want them to make sense, and I want it all to still be a good story, obviously. If you don't have a point to something exploding, then the explosion is just loud noise. I enjoyed watching the Fast and Furious franchise, mostly because I was spending time with my dad, and he really loves action movies. Like, that's his favorite. More about our connection. And maybe that's why people watch movies that they watch. And fair enough. But will I stay awake and remember all of those cotton candy movies? The jury is still out on that. So that's my thoughts for today, guys. It feels good to be back. And I have to say, hearing of Betty White's transition, which is the term I use for death, because death to me is not real. We go on forever. Our shells don't, but we do. Our essence does. So hearing of Betty White's transition has really, I just start crying sometimes when I think about her. I did an ode to Betty White this week, so it's in one of these corners. Check that out. Thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, share. If you're feeling it, hit the notificationer. And I'll see you guys soon with another one.